chilling one.
Okay, what happened? It's this bad weather.
Yeah, it's the bad weather.
Yeah, it's the bad weather. Chalo, good. I must thank you for initiating, for recharging the department. Thank you so much. So, Shashank, I really liked the way you had started with your presentation yesterday. It's a very good idea. Very well done.
Shashank, you're on mute.
Oh shit. अरे मैं इससे पकड़ के बोल ठीक है देखिए I have to speak ऐसे मतलब फोन से I'm speaking मतलब सॉरी ईयरफोन्स हो गए चार्ज.
Hello ma'am. Good evening ma'am.
Good evening. How are you? Yeah, everybody seems to be very good.
हाँ
Were you able to
प्रत्युष
attend the English webinar today morning?
No, ma'am.
I wanted to. I had to go somewhere urgently. It was a good one.
India, that is Bharat one, no, ma'am?
No, today one was on Gandhi.
Okay.
Or what's happening about your masters, Saurav?
Ma'am, right now, currently, I have applied for presidency, and I did clear their merit list, but right now, Bengal is having the system of doing it through a calculation based.
Okay.
So I have to calculate my grade, my credit, and then submit them a table. So actually, I'm doing that right now while I'll be attending the lecture. So other than that, on 21st we have JNU exam, so that is happening.
Okay. It's an online exam, JNU?
No, I have to go to the center.
Yeah.
अच्छा प्रत्युष मैं बोल रहा था कि if I'll put this background ऐसे पीछे और उसके साथ मुझे प्रेजेंट करना होगा and then I'm supposed to turn off my camera ऐसे बीच में प्रेजेंटेशन के so am I getting this option क्योंकि मैंने प्रेजेंट करते हुए सेम स्क्रीन से सेम ऐसे बैकग्राउंड लगा के कभी नहीं किया so that's why एक बार ट्राई कर लूँ मतलब if that works. नहीं बैकग्राउंड तो चल जाएगा मतलब
Okay.
Yeah, sure ma'am.
एक सेकंड में एक बार कर लूँ इसे just.
Now both Basra ma'am and OP sir are professors.
Also, Vidushi, I think you flipped your background.
इसका उल्टा आ रहा है ना.
Can I rejoin again?
Yeah, please. We still have time.
एक बार मैं भी अपनी स्क्रीन शेयर कर दूंगी इसके बाद.
See, this is what I was asking कि अभी मैं प्रेजेंट कर रहा हूँ तो मुझे स्क्रीन पे सिर्फ मेरी प्रेजेंटेशन दिख रही है. So how am I supposed to turn off my camera मतलब right after the introduction?
So you share only one tab. Don't share your entire window. Share a tab.
Okay.
And go back to like Google Meets. तो वो यहाँ पे ये constant रहेगा, but you'll be able to like open Meets.
ठीक है. So present करते हुए
stop
presenting just one tab. Okay. हाँ, I get this option की one tab.
हाँ.
Should I send a message to these third years? Where are they? I have told them compulsory.
Works now, right? But अभी इसी के बीच में
Also one thing, ये जब full screen रहेगा ना, then you won't be able to close your camera. So only when it's like this तो मतलब तुझे भी तो अपना टैब देखना पड़ेगा ना ऊपर, what all tabs are open, then only you'll be able to switch your camera off.
देखो अभी आई एम गोइंग टू दिस टैब, तब भी तुम्हें सिर्फ वही दिख रहा है एंड यहाँ से मैंने अपना कैमरा ऑफ कर लिया.
Okay, perfect. हाँ, great. Done.
एंड नाउ आई एम बैक टू माय प्रेजेंटेशन. तो यहाँ से मैंने इतना किया एंड नाउ आई लाइक इंट्रोड्यूस माय सेल्फ. अब मुझे क्लोज करना है, सो वापस से जाकर क्लोज कर रहा हूँ. फॉर एग्जांपल मैं अभी गया और मैंने खोल दिया ऐसे,
Right.
कैमरा वापस टर्न ऑन
इसके
कर
बारे
दिया.
में मैं भी करके
ठीक है,
सही है.
दिस वर्क्स फाइन. ठीक है.
You can see my screen, no?
हाँ, so
अभी भी दिख रही है ना?
हाँ अभी भी दिख रही है.
Okay, great.
अभी भी उल्टा ही आ रहा है.
नहीं, मेरे में भी उल्टा ही आ रहा है ना. आई गेस वो तो ऐसे ही है. देखो एक बार. अच्छा,
Vidushi,
ओके.
are you flipping your this picture? या ये खुद से हो रही है? Yeah, that is exactly what I'm asking. मतलब yeah, just put it as your background as it is. उसको flip करने की जरूरत नहीं है.
इसीलिए अपने फेस के डायमेंशंस भी सब ऑपोजिट दिख रहे थे, तो आई वाज लाइक कि मेरा फेस ऐसे क्यों है.
And now it's all right, Vidushi.
हाँ, नाउ इट्स फाइन.
Hello, OP. How are you?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
This second year is very talented. Vidushi, I think we can start.
Okay, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. I extend a very warm greeting to all of you. Respected Amrit Mahotsav ma'am, Mr. Shrikant Pandey sir, convener of IQAC, all of our professors and our amazing audience. I am Vidushi Sainath and I welcome you all to our very first event of the series Hidden in Plain Sight. In the celebration of second event of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we at Itihāsa, the History Association of Delhi College of Arts and Commerce and IQAC are here to celebrate the luminaries of pre and post independent India who immensely contributed in various fields to make country what it is today. This is an attempt of us to express our gratitude to such great souls. Now, I would request Professor O.P. Singh to share a few words with us. O.P. sir.
Thank you, Vidushi. In fact, the nation is celebrating the 75th year of independence as Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and such endeavors of ours are actually small steps towards that celebration. And this is not just a part of celebration of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, but for me as a student of history, it is more important for young scholars like you to inculcate the value of research, because uh, research at this level, because when we leave college and complete our post graduation and then we are suddenly pushed into research, we are hardly familiar with what research is. So starting with such steps, and celebrating individuals, not so famous individuals who have contributed to the nation building, is a very welcome step as far as I can think. And I welcome you all to this very first event. uh, and I uh, I request the celebration to continue in many such ways. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your such kind words. For the first session, we have with us Ms. Tejaswi Singh, student, second year student of the department, speaking on Nani Palkhiwala. So, without further delay, let's start. But before that, I would request all of you to switch off their mics. And for questions, you can type your questions in chat box during Q&A session. Let's start. Tejaswi, please.
Uh, right. Good afternoon, everyone. Vidushi, can you please confirm once if you can see my screen?
Yeah, it's visible.
I just okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. This is Tejaswi Singh, and I am a history and law enthusiast. And I'm going to give a presentation on Nani Palkhiwala. Nani Palkhiwala was one of the many gems of the 21st century India, and I'll just turn off my camera before I begin. Right. So, today, why are we going to give a presentation on Nani Bhai is because he is one of the greatest children of the century, and his life and works have become one such rare embodiment which needs to be reminded to all of us, all the coming generations, and that is why we are here presenting his life in Hidden in Plain Sight. His contributions to the issues of Indian economy, constitutionalism, and liberal democracy were immensely obligating to the advancement of the post independent India. Other than that, his adherence to ethics, values, and liberal principles are a guiding force to everyone that came after him. I will start with his initial early life, how a boy who used to stammer became one of the finest orators of the country. Nani Bhai's full name was Nani Adarsh Pilkhiwala, and he was born on 16th January 1920 in the then Bombay Presidency to middle class blue collar Indian Parsi parents his father Adarshin Nanaboy Pilkhiwala and mother Sheher Banu. So the title that we see, Pilkhiwala, comes from Palkhiwala comes from the traditional business of manufacturing palkis that was taken up by his parent. He was the last one to carry this business, and after that, Nani became the first generation lawyer. His initial education was at Masters Tutorial High School and later at St. Xavier's College, both in the then Bombay, and his master's degree was in English literature. So he used to stammer and he overcame his speech impediment when he undertook English literature. And he wanted to become a lecturer at Bombay University, but what happened next? So he could not get through it because by the time he wanted to apply to other colleges, the admission process was closed. And therefore, for last resort, he opted for law at Government Law College, Bombay. And that is how his unplanned tryst with law began. He also pursued his wish of teaching by becoming a part-time teacher in GLC Bombay later on in the same year. And he was so good at teaching that his students never bunked his classes. He taught with a lot of humor and wit and was a very popular teacher. Um, so also when he finally became a barrister, he was excellent at it, and he had a gift for unraveling the intricacies for jurisprudence, which is nothing but the philosophy of law. Finally, when he completed his course in GLC Bombay, he enrolled himself in the Bar Association of Bombay and started his journey in 1946 through the chambers of Sir Jamshedji Behramji Kanga, who was also an alumni of his own college, GLC Bombay. And even to date, GLC Bombay is one of the most prestigious law colleges of the country. So he used to be in the center of attention in the court because juniors from the bar association and law aspirants used to see him argue in the court. He was so amazing that nobody could resist the urge to come and see him argue. His excellent court crafts and his extraordinary ability to recall barely known facts rendered him irresistible force. And within a few years, he made his name in Bombay High Court. It was also this time that together with Sri Jamshedji, he authored what is still an authoritative work of economics and law, The Law and Practice of Income Tax. But this was the time when he was at the age of 30. He published his first book, and it was 1950. But however, Advocate Kanga later admitted that the credit for this work belonged exclusively to Nani and that he had no contribution in the book. Later on, he was called the Defender of Rights. Why is that? So his initial forte was commercial and tax law, and his first case, the case he appeared in as the first case he appeared in was where he was a junior counsel. It was the Nusairwalji Balsara versus the state of Bombay. Although he lost the case, but he was appreciated. And before the year was over, he was already arguing before the Bombay High Court himself. But his first case of constitutional significance was again lost. It was about a challenge of the validity of land acquisition acts. So after this, within 10 years of his entry into the Bar Association and into the Bombay High Court, his career as a lawyer in the Bombay High Court, he was already arguing in the Supreme Court. And in the Supreme Court, he completely indulged himself in constitutional matters. And these matters till date are constitutional matters of huge significance. They are landmark cases. A lot of cases done by him are prominent, and in a book, Nani Palkhivala, A Role Model, Major General Neelendra Kumar has listed 140 cases in which he appeared and the cases which became prominent. 140 is a huge number for a lawyer to be able to do these many cases and also to be able to make these cases prominent and landmark. So listed on the screen are few of the many cases, and amongst these fews, I am further going to discuss some 4 or 5 of them so that we understand his journey as a lawyer. This case is something that everybody, irrespective of the fact whether they are a history student or not, whether they are a law student or not, Kesav Nanda Bharti versus the state of Kerala is a case that everybody has heard of. If they have no idea, they have still heard of it. So in this case is also called as the fundamental rights case, and it's the culmination of Palkhiwala's success before the Supreme Court, and it came in this case, and this is a landmark case, and it is one of the first case laws that a law student reads. What had happened in this case? So the amending powers of the parliament to amend the Indian constitution and to amend the constitution in such a way that it takes the fundamental rights of the citizen away, these powers of the parliament were challenged. And Nani persuaded the Supreme Court to put limitations on the power of parliament. And in this case, the very popular and the very important basic structure doctrine came into being. The picture on the screen is of Nani Palkhivala with Justice H.M.C. Ravi. He is one of the judges of the 13 judges constitutional bench that gave the landmark judgment. What was the merit of this case, and why do we say that he was a legendary lawyer who saved the constitution? So the then Nehru government had added the 9th schedule in the constitution through the first Constitutional Amendment Act in 1951. And according to Article 31, the laws that are placed under the 9th schedule cannot be challenged in a court of law, which in legal terms means that they were not under the purview of judiciary, not under judicial review. And since they violated the fundamental rights of the citizen. But what exactly the then government did, and what exactly did they do was that after the first Constitutional Amendment Act, this protective umbrella covered around, in fact, over 250 laws that were passed by center and state legislatures with the aim of immunizing certain laws against judicial review. So this is something which is a real problem. Had it happened, and had this case not been there, the governments would have been able to do anything that they wanted to do. And that is when the court propounded the basic structure doctrine, in which it says that they are saying that no specific provision of the constitution was immune to amendment, which means that any part of the constitution could be amended, provided that it does not violate the basic structure or the inner unity of the constitution. And the procedures that are prescribed under Article 368 should be followed properly. The Article 368 describes how the parliament should amend the constitution. Another case of high significance is of Minerva Mills versus Union of India. This case took place in 1980. And in this case, Nani fought to protect the constitution from mutilation. The validity of the 42nd Amendment, which happened during the Indira Gandhi tenure of 1976, that amendment was challenged, and the court ruled that only a limited amending power could be exercised. And in the continuation of the previous slide, a limited amending power itself is a basic feature of the constitution. And like we see that the basic structure cannot be altered, the validity of this was challenged and terminated. And what really happened was that in Article 368, which is how the legislature should function and how the legislature can amend the constitution, a new clause was added. 2 new clauses were added Clause 4, which said that judicial review would be removed, and Clause 5, which expanded the powers of amendment of Article 368. So it was indirectly going to be a boon for the parliament but a bane for the judiciary. But thanks to this case that it was struck down, and thus the democratic spirit of the country was strengthened in true means. Another case was the Bennett Coleman and Company versus Union of India that took place in 1972, and it was an attempt to stifle dissenting opinions. And the central government, again the Indira Gandhi government, imposed import controls on newsprints. But Palkhiwala argued and said, and I quote him, that newspaper does not stand on the same footing as steel. Steel will yield products of steel. Newsprint will manifest whatever is thought of by a man. So he was a strong proponent of the rights of freedom of expression and freedom of press. And this was again a case in which he appeared victorious, and the import control imposes that were that the government made, they were struck down. Another case which is really fascinating is Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narain, and another that happened in 1975. In previous slides, we are seeing that Nani is against the government and not supporting the government, and that too twice. He is in war directly with Indira Gandhi. But what happened in this case is that he agreed to defend the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And what had happened in this case is that Raj Narain, the person who filed this complaint, he was from Janta Party, and it was about the 1971 general elections of the Raebareli constituency. And Lok Sabha and Indira Gandhi's election to Lok Sabha was overturned by the Allahabad High Court on the simple grounds of corruption. And Nani Pilkhiwala decided to defend her despite not agreeing with her on a lot of things, despite being on a fight sort of thing previously with her, and despite not agreeing with her on her economic policies. This shows his balanced approach and belief that judiciary should not be allowed to dismiss elected officials on inadequate grounds. So the ground of corruption, according to Nani, was an inadequate ground. And now the interesting thing is that he was supporting Indira Gandhi, and initially he did get a stay from the Supreme Court in this matter. But just after this, Indira Gandhi declared emergency, and according to Nani, according to Nani, emergency was an insurrection of the constitution. And then he did not hesitate in taking a stand and decided to withdraw himself from the matter. This shows that he had a firm character and the ability to stand for what he thought was right. This is a quote by Nani Palkhiwala, where he says that we Indians are individually intelligent but collectively foolish. So this is open to interpretation, and this is just there so that we get some insight into how Nani Bhai Pilkhiwala used to think of things, used to think of the nation that he saw. Now, Nani Pilkhiwala as an economist. So, in the interests of promoting free market economic principles, he served on several organizations and forums to promote his ideas and sound policies to the people. And in the same order, he also served in International Monetary Fund. And during 1968 to 2000, which is a very long period, he was the president of the Forum for Free Enterprises, Bombay. And it's also the time where he delivered the famous post-union budget speeches and published essays and writings on affairs of economics, liberal democracy, public finances, taxation, and among others. The picture on the screen is after the LPG reforms of 1992. This is Nani Palkhiwala with the then Finance Minister Manmohan Singh and industrialist J.R.D. Tata. Okay, so Nani was a very candid and an influential orator, and during the same time, he became such an influential personality that in 1983, the annual budget speech was shifted to Brabourne Stadium, Mumbai, because there was no other place which could accommodate such large amount of audience, and the picture in background is of the same. So, uh, not even today we see so many people in front of the in front of the parliament when a union budget is presented, but it was Nani and his influential oration that that fetched so many people towards him. Okay, now why do we call him an intellectual giant? So so right, so why do we call him an intellectual giant? He was such a down-to-earth human that in 1963 he was offered a seat as a judge in the Supreme Court of India, but he declined the seat. In 1968, he was again offered a position of Attorney General of India, which is the highest law officer of the country, by Govind Menon, who was the law minister of the Congress government, but he again declined. He writes about this episode in his book We the Nation, that initially he accepted the offer, but at night when he slept he was so uneasy and dizzy that he woke up at 3 a.m. and he waited till morning 6 a.m. The first call he made in the morning was to Govind Menon, apologizing to him and telling him that he won't be able to accept the offer. Everything for the only reason that he did not want any political influence on him and he wanted to remain a free man. He also writes in his book We the Nation that the years that followed, it was his privilege to argue under the same Congress government and on behalf of the citizen against the government. And these are the major cases that have shaped and molded the constitutional law of India. His international journey. So, he has received recognition from renowned academicians as well. A book, Working a Democratic Constitution, by the eminent scholar Granville Austin, in which the reference to Palkhiwala occurs at 16 pages. It shows the kind of recognition he received. So he represented India before this special tribunal in Geneva, and he was appointed by the UN to deliver judgment on the matter, where Pakistan had claimed some territories of Kutch, Gujarat. He won this matter. Later, he represented India before the before the International Civil Aviation Organization in Montreal, and he again won this case. And later, he appealed before the World Court at The Hague when Pakistan claimed the facility of overflying India, and again he won. So even as a lawyer at international courts, he always brought pride to India and defended what according to him was right. So although he was defending his country, but he never did anything which according to his rationality was wrong. The only office of profit that he accepted his entire life was when he was appointed as the Indian ambassador to the United States of America in 1977. It was during the Janta government period, which was the first non-Congress government in India, and the Prime Minister was Morarji Desai, and he served in this capacity for 2 years, from 77 to 79. There are also honorary doctorates that he received from Princeton University, Rutgers University, Lawrence University, University of Wisconsin Medicine, Annamalai University, Ambedkar Law University, University of Bombay. These are the honorary doctorates that he received, and the number of awards that he received from these and other universities are innumerable. So, a question that one can ask while reading about Nani Palkhiwala is, how down to earth is too down to earth? So, we have already discussed about this in previous slides, but I would again like to mention some episodes that happened in his life, and which gives us an idea about how down to earth he was. So, like we previously mentioned, that he, for the right reasons, declined the judgeship of the Supreme Court of India. Morarji Desai, who was the then Prime Minister, he described him as the country's finest intellectual. Public used to call him the keeper of the conscience of the nation. So when the public starts acknowledging and accepting a person who is not from any political party as keeper of the conscience of the nation, it is a great deal of pride for the person. He also received recognitions from many other organizations. So he calls himself a free man in a letter that he wrote to Rajaji, which was a reply to a letter that Rajaji wrote on 27 June 1971, where he requested him to be the president of Swatantra Party. Swatantra Party was founded in 1959, and it was one of the major opposition to Nehru's Congress government of that time. But Nani replied on 9th July 71, and I quote him that, "I find it very painful to say no to a man whom I hold in such high esteem on the ground of remaining an independent person outside politics." Throughout the slide till now, we have seen his pictures with prominent people inside of politics, prominent people from industry, from business. This picture is him, Nani Bhai, standing with the U.S. President Jimmy Carter during his visit to India in 1978. Also, we see Atal Bihari Vajpayee here. He has a lot of pictures like that, but he always wanted to remain outside politics and a person and a free man. These are the books that he have authored. So in total, there are 9 books that he has authored, and a number of essays and articles. These are all related to the LPG reforms of 1991, and all of them have been written prior to the reforms and with reference to the reforms. So he believed in the LPG reforms and he wrote about them. I request, if the audience has to, if the audience wants to take a screenshot, please take it. Then I'll move to the next slide. Right. So many public institutions gave him Lifetime Achievement Awards, Man of the Year Awards, a lot of awards. He was also the trustee of the Sir Darobji Tata Trust and Sir Ratan Tata Trust. He also played a crucial part in guiding their charitable activities, their humanitarian projects. The Nani Pilkhiwala Arbitration Center, NPAC, was also established by Pilkhiwala, I'm really sorry, Palkhiwala Foundation, to promote institutional arbitration in India, keeping in mind the growing burden on Indian courts and the inordinate delay in disposal of cases because of lack of judges, lack of the judiciary. He had an unquenchable confidence in the long-term future of India and its young people. He was honored with the Padma Vibhushan in 1998, which is one of the highest civilian awards. And only because he had this unquenchable confidence in the long-term future of Indian people, the current generation of millennia needs to learn about the works of this liberal scholar and a statesman, because He was truly a responsible citizen and he led an exemplary life with work ethics in public sphere. These are the books that have been written on Nani Palkhiwala. Uh, First one is the most recent one, written by the last Attorney General of India, Soli J. Sorabji, with Arvind P. Datar, Courtroom Genius. Another book is The Legends of Nani Palkhiwala by M.R. Pai. Then Nani A. Palkhiwala Alive by M.V. Kamath, and Wits and Wisdom of Nani A. Palkhiwala by Jignesh R. Shah. Nani is also listed amongst the top 10 lawyers of the world, and he's also called a constitutional legend. End of an era. So, with the last slide, it's really sad to be talking about the end of an era in the last slide, but that is the harsh reality of the world. And maybe that is also an inspiration for all the coming generations and the generations that have come after him to take his legacy ahead. To take his legacy ahead with themselves and to be what he always wanted India to be. So, C. Rajgopalachari once talked about Palkhiwala and said that he's a gift, that he's a God's gift to us. And Soli J. Sorabji, the former Attorney General of India, says that he definitely left a dent on Indian humanity in his article Palkhiwala and the Constitution of India. So, after going through ill health for around 4 years, he was suffering from schizophrenia. He took his last breath on December 11, 2002, and he was 82-year-old when he died. He made numerous contributions to the development of the political system in India, and he's a legend because he always stood up for what, according to him, was right. He used his talents to the fullest and made use of his values. And we are very proud to be talking about him in one of our first sessions of Hidden in Plain Sight. Thank you so much. I'll take up questions now.
Thank you, Tejaswi. That was a really amazing and insightful presentation. Moving towards the Q&A session, you can type your questions in chat box. We have a question, Tejaswi, from Saurabh.
Right. Saurabh, I did not get the question. Writings on personalities. Can you please elucidate it a bit more?
Tejasvi, I think Saurabh has left the meeting and again joined back.
Okay.
Right.
I have joined. I had a
Okay, now he's here.
okay. Okay. Sorry, my internet connection went away all of a sudden. But the question which I have is like as I've mentioned, it's not on Nani Palkhiwala, but rather on the writings on famous personalities like him and such. So, would you be okay if I ask a question? It's more like on an ethical ground. The question.
Right, sure.
May I
I'll
ask?
try to answer.
Okay. So while a student of history or even a eminent historian goes on the journey of writing on these personalities, there is always a question of what we call as the psychohistory or what we call as historians becoming psychologists and uh, labeling personalities with characteristics like firm character, bringing pride to India, being down to earth. As in, historians are like there is this one characteristic that historians are not psychologists. They cannot actually assess a personality's characters and his intentions, which I find that in your lecture it was done a lot, and it was done to your own personal on an own personal level rather than citing some other biographers or historians. So you engaged into this practice of psychohistory, where you as a person, student of history, is psychologically analyzing a personality. So
Right. So, from a personal point of view,
and it is often been considered as a very a ground of contestation, because obviously you are not a hello.
yeah, Saurabh, we can hear you.
Hello.
Saurabh, we can hear you. Yes, you're audible.
Actually, I couldn't hear what were you saying.
I could hear you. Can you please continue?
Yeah. So this is my question. Like, what are your thoughts on this notion of psychohistory?
Right. So, I would not be giving a general.
What practice of psychohistory, and that you have in your lecture have used it a lot, terming things like he was down to earth, how down to earth. Yeah.
Right, Saurabh. Right. Okay.
Continue.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. I think I'll give a personal answer on this, what I believe, and also with reference to Nani Palkhiwala only, because giving a general answer would be tough for me. So, about Palkhiwala, most of the writings have been done by people who were or are in the same profession as him. And these are the people who call him a statesman, who call him down to earth, who call him a prominent legal luminary. And I think coming from them proves that he was one. And about psycho history, I think it does make an impact, and it's again a very personal thing. So there are people who want to portray, say for example, Aurangzeb as a negative character, as a very evil king, and then there are also historians who portray him, who glorify him. So this is a very personal choice, and I'm sure there must be merits to what people are saying, and I think that is what I have to say about it.
May I add something to it?
Sure, sir.
In fact, what you are saying is all right, because you are discussing an individual, and when you discuss an individual, some praise or criticism is bound to happen. But as a student of history, we should not practice only praise. We should also look at the aspects critically as well. For example, it was a very good reason when he refuted the offer made by Congress government to get a government job. But the same person becomes a government official. He accepts a government post as ambassador during another government. So, I mean, these are contradictions in his personality. But as when you talk an individual, some praise and criticism is bound to happen. So, what I should say, Saurabh, that when she just student of second year, just completed her first year and has come into second year. So she might not be familiar with all these aspects of relationship between history and psychology and all these personality traits and uh, other features. But we should praise. We should rather hail what do you call Tejaswi for very good start of this entire event that we are planning to have. Thank you, Tejaswi.
Thank you so much.
I would also like to add something over here. The whole idea behind these series was that there are lots of names that we know who have contributed, but a lot of details about them we don't know. So the whole idea was a learning process, and I agree with what Professor O.P. Singh has said, that as students of history, we must also have a critical approach. And he's really pointed out a very pertinent point over here. But then the idea was that there are so many names that we know of who have played an important role in the building of modern India. So this whole idea was to just just to learn more about them, and give an opportunity to our students, as Professor O.P. Singh pointed out, to indulge in some kind of a research so that they are ready for it once they have finished their masters. Thank you.
Right.
Hello, ma'am. Can I say something?
Yes, please, sir.
No, actually, the presentation was very good, and this is how one learns in academia how to make one's argument. Now, as far as critical component is concerned, which both you and OP has pointed out, uh, if we judge Nani Palkhiwala's own moral standard, that he says that he will not be joining or aligning with any other political party. And if he uh, joins as ambassador of India in US during the Janata regime, that can also be seen that his conviction was more clear. If I believe that I am a non-partisan person, but that does not uh, mean that I cannot join some offer given by some political dispensation. I may have my objections. I may have my idea that I am an apolitical person. But being apolitical also means that you are having some idea
Ideal.
about, yeah. So at that moment of time, Palkhiwala might have thought that his political economic ideas about liberalization might help India in getting some support from the US for the country, and that was not acceptable to that government, because India before that was closely related to USSR. India was closely related to USSR, and Palkhiwala's political or diplomatic maneuver ultimately helped India in bringing closer to the US. So there are so many perspectives which one can take into account. So anyway,
That's that's true, sir. But
yeah,
any act of anybody can be justified or unjustified through
yes,
arguments. Even God say justified the murder of Gandhi.
yes.
But
So that
but
is why
but but
oh,
that is justification. Howsoever,
yeah.
the point is that such acts raise eyebrows when you try to say that you are non-political, you are non-partisan, you don't want to be party to the government, you don't want to be spokesman of the government, and so on and so forth.
So that is the job which the students who are going to become historians someday, that they, but more thing is clear, OP, when you try to justify or criticize any fact, because the fact does not change, but the prism which you uh, allow to be used in magnifying or explaining the things, that makes the difference. The glass which you wear, that makes the difference. And that is the difference in our arguments. That how are we looking at a particular thing? And that will remain forever. So,
Of course, that will remain
yes.
forever. That will remain forever. That will remain
Anyway, this
forever.
was a very good attempt. But what I would suggest that through your this brief historical journey, I have learned two things. Number one, your failure should not dissuade you from, sorry, your failure should not dissuade you from pursuing your passion. Had it been that, Palkhiwala would not have been a great lawyer. As you referred that he lost all his first case. In all his first cases, he lost the case in High Court Bombay and Supreme Court. Number one. Number two, one should stick to one's own conviction. And that is why his love for freedom, both ways, individual freedom as well as economic freedom, he stood for it till he was alive. So these two things are very important, which we can learn from his life. Thank you
True,
very much.
sir. I wish there were many more Palkhiwalas in present situations as well, which need for or call for freedom of expression and conviction with the which one wants to live, which is probably lacking again.
Of course, Palkhiwala was the person who gave us freedom of press as fundamental right, which is not in the constitution. It was the judgment of Supreme Court in which he was fighting, as she was referring Bennett Coleman case.
Right, sir.
Thank you, everyone. I guess all the questions are answered. So, thank you, Tejaswi, for such an amazing presentation.
Thank you so
Uh,
much, Vidushi. But there are two more questions, one by Officer and another by Sahil. In short, Sahil's answer would be that no, Palkhiwala was not a philanthropist. He was honest towards his job, and maybe that is why people look at him so highly. But he was not a philanthropist. And um, OP sir asked that how do you see the refusal of a post by precisely the thing that we have been talking about from past few minutes. So, sir, again, this may be
You
about.
don't need to answer it. This was a point that I made during my observation. You can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, moving towards the next session, we have with us Mr. Shashank Rawat, again a second year student of the department, speaking on Lady Meherbai Tata. So, without much delay, let's proceed. Shashank, please.
Hi, am I audible now?
Yes, Shashank, you are.
Let me share the screen. Is it fine? Is it visible? Or is
Yes,
it
it
visible,
is.
Vidushi?
Yes, yes.
So, it was November 29, 1927, when nation states in the West were experiencing feminist movements for women's suffrage and for environment conservation. A country as humongous as British India was yet to get rid of a rooted social evil, child marriage. It was also the time when women were deprived of their basic rights in India. And here stood up a woman, a pioneer Indian feminist, Lady Meherbai Tata, at a college in Michigan, speaking for the bill which was to be introduced in India to fix a minimum age at which girls may be married. Good evening, everyone. I'm Shashank Rawat, a practitioner of history, and I'm here to present on someone seldom recognized but truly inspirational, the original feminist icon of India, Lady Meherbai Tata. We would have a glance at her early life, some significant speeches and anecdotes, some of her interests, later developments in the course, and tributes to Lady Meherbai. We'll get to know how Meherbai Tata, being a figure from pre independent India, is still in the list of unrecognized figures who played a vital role in shaping independent India. It was her initiative that inspired millions of women to step ahead, and laws came to develop further with time on child marriage, women's suffrage, and Parda system. Lady Meherbai Tata was born on October 10, 1879, in a Parsi family and was called Mehri, which later evolved to Meherbai. Her father was the educationist H.J. Baba, who had personally supervised his daughter's education and introduced her to European ideas and people. She was beautiful and accomplished and had a love for English literature. Lady Meherbai demonstrated an independence in thought and actions from a very young age, standing up to her father to retain her Persian name in its Persian form when he expressed the intent to change it to the anglicized Mary. In 1898, at the age of 19, she married Sir Darobji Tata, eldest son of Sir Jamsetji Tata. She was thus uniquely placed to advance the cause of women, belonging to one of India's foremost families and having access to the drawing rooms of Europe as well as the palaces of India. In 1904, 6 years after her marriage, she went on a tour of Europe and was struck by European women's commitment to social work. She felt that a network of women's clubs should be formed among well to do Indian families as well. In 1905, she organized an exhibition of women's craft and as part of the industrial exhibition in Bombay. But she also exhorted her compatriots to show an active interest in social problems, to visit the slums and talk to poor women rather than set up homes and orphanages. In 1917, she led a large delegation of women to the Viceroy to protest the condition of indentured laborers in the colonies. She blamed Parda, caste differences, and lack of education for the divisions between women and their inability to associate with each other and produce social change. Lady Meherbai Tata played an enthusiastic role in raising contributions during World War I and was an active member of the Indian Red Cross Society at that time. In 1919, in recognition of her services to women's progress and to the war efforts, she was made a commander of the British Empire and received this honor at the hands of King George V. Under her aegis, the National Council of Indian Women was formed in 1929. Those who joined were like Lady Tata, wives of powerful men who could use their husbands' wealth and status for social work. But unlike Lady Tata, they did not feel the necessity of making links with slum women. Thus, the pattern of the Council's work came even closer to the social work undertaken by society ladies in Europe, in spite of Lady Tata's rather different intentions. A personality so strong had delivered some significant speeches, and her life produced some interesting anecdotes. Let's now have a look at few of them. The Child Marriage Restraint Act, popularly known as the Sarda Act, was passed in 1929 thanks in no small part to the pioneers of the women's movement in India like Lady Meherbai Tata. Lady Tata was not only consulted on the Sarda Act, she also actively campaigned for it in India and abroad. As a member of the nascent women's organizations of the time, such as the National Women's Council and the All India Women's Conference. She made a case for the Hindu marriage bill at a college in Michigan on November 29, 1927, 2 days after she and her husband, Sir Darobji Tata, met the then US President Calvin Coolidge at the White House. She told the audience at the Battle Creek College, which is now Andrews University, I have here a pamphlet sent to me by one of the legislators of India today who wishes to introduce a bill in the government of India to fix a minimum age at which girls may be married. Quoting from the legislator's introductory speech, she said, I have a word to say to the government as to their attitude towards the bill. A heavy responsibility rests on them for the continuance of this evil. Government probably knows that several Indian states, for instance, Baroda, Mysore, and Bharatpur, have passed laws forbidding marriages of girls below 12. Recently, the state quota in Rajasthan promulgated a new marriage act. This shows what attitude governments really interested in and solicitous of the welfare of their people are taking in regard to child marriage, and the duty of the government of India lies clear before them. She added, I sincerely hope this bill will be passed. It is to be brought before the government again next February, I think. The bill, however, wasn't passed till September 28, 1929, and it would not have been possible without the ability of women leaders like Lady Tata to convince Indians as well as build the pressure of world opinion. Despite being married into a wealthy family, she kept in active touch with all segments of society. One particular story is very interesting. When she heard that women living in a poor area of Baikala in Mumbai were unable to get access to food because of riots, she offered to become a food and vegetable vendor herself, along with some of her lady colleagues. But the mayor refused her request, saying that his team and he did not consider it graceful for distinguished ladies to sell food. To which Lady Tata responded with quiet dignity, we ladies did not come here to be graceful. We came here to be useful. She also spoke of the struggle at the All India Women's Conference in 1930 in demanding equal political status for women in the proposed new constitution. The absence of women members in the Legislative Assembly was felt as a great drawback by the supporters of the Sarda Bill, as women could have voiced their feelings of their sisters with greater directness and force than men, to whom, nevertheless, our warmest acknowledgments are due to their bold and courageous stand for the bill. Lady Tata's effective work for the Sarda Act was only one aspect of her vast contribution to women's emancipation in India. She was committed to women's suffrage, girls' education, and the removal of the Parda system, and was an expert at championing them on global platforms. The International Women's Suffrage News in London reported in 1921, the Legislative Council of Bombay has passed a resolution giving women suffrage. A big public meeting in favor of women's suffrage was held in the Wilson College Hall, Bombay, under the presidency of Lady Tata, and a resolution calling on the Legislative Council to enfranchise the women of Bombay was passed and sent to every member of the Legislative Council. We rejoice in this second big victory for Indian women and confess to a happily envious amazement at the wonderful speed with which they put things through. Another British newspaper, Despair, took note of her role in helping to organize the Indian conference during Women's Week at Wembley in 1924. As president of the Federation of Indian Women's Leagues in India and as one of the founders of the Bombay Presidency Women's Council, Lady Tata also brought India into the International Council of Women. She is also known for her contribution to the preservation of Tata Steel, one of the country's biggest steel manufacturers and its pride. That is about the beautiful diamond she owned and later gave away. The Jubilee diamond at 245 carats was twice as large as the famous Kohinoor and bought for her by her loving husband. Lady Meherbai Tata wore it to special events on a fine platinum chain. However, in the 1920s, Tata Steel, then called Tisco, went through a great financial crisis and was on the verge of collapse. To resolve this crisis, the Jubilee Diamond, which was part of their personal wealth, was pledged to Imperial Bank by Darokji Tata and Meherbai to raise funds. This did solve the problem, and Tata Steel lived on to prosper greatly. Later, this diamond was sold, and the proceeds were used for the creation of the Sir Darobji Tata Trust, which has been at the forefront of so many philanthropic activities in India. Meherbai was fond of playing tennis and became very proficient at the sport. She was the first Indian woman drawn to play Olympic tennis, the mixed doubles in the Paris Olympics of 1924. What is most interesting and unique is that she played all her tennis matches wearing the Parsi sari, driven by her pride in her nation and perhaps also to make a point to the British who were ruling India at that time. Meherbai's passion for sports went beyond tennis too. She was an expert horse rider as well. Not only about sports, she also was a pianist from childhood and among the first Indian women to fly as a passenger in the Zeppelin airship in 1912. Lady Meherbai Tata traveled widely with Sardar Ji, charming world leaders like the then US President Calvin Coolidge and the then King and Queen of England. Later developments were made on the laws against child marriage. After India's independence in 1947, the Act underwent two revisions. The minimum legal age for marriage was increased to 15 for girls in 1949 and to 18 for females and 21 for males in 1978. The Government of India brought the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act (PCMA) in 2006 and it came into effect on 1st November 2007 and to address and fix the shortcomings of the Child Marriage Restraint Act. The change in name was meant to reflect the prevention and prohibition of child marriage rather than restraining it. Child marriage remains active political subject as well as a subject of continuing cases under review in the highest courts of India. Lady Meherbai Tata unfortunately died of leukemia in 1931 after a courageous fight against this terrible disease. The mark she left behind after her death was evident in the obituaries written about her. The Common Cause, a London publication, wrote, Lady Tata's death in June is a great blow to the women's movement in India. It will be almost as much felt in women's international groups in other lands, where for some years past she has been increasingly looked to as India's spokeswoman. Lady Tata was admirably fitted to play the part of India's representative to the women of other countries. She had great force of character, which, combined with real kindness and singular graciousness of manner, made her presence immediately felt in any conference. Women in many lands formed their impression of the modern emancipated Indian women from her forceful speech, her beauty, and wise tolerance. The tribute highlighted her international outlook and how her refusal to be held back by barriers of race and color made her the moving spirit of the National Council of Women in India. Lady Tata belonged also to the much smaller group which believes also in cooperation with women of other lands. It added, she had an infinite capacity for taking pains and never gave a hasty or unconsidered judgment. Whenever she promised to help a person or cause, she did so to the last ounce of her strength and beyond it, as her all too early death has proved. At a meeting held in London on 20th July, many tributes were paid to Lady Tata. Talking of the tributes to Lady Meherbai Tata, Sir Darobji Tata founded a trust in her memory which was dedicated to cancer research. This mission against cancer eventually led to the founding of the Tata Memorial Hospital in Mumbai in 1941. In the year 1933 was established Lady Meherbai Tata Education Trust Scholarship, a merit-based overseas master's scholarship program for women graduates engaged in social work, social science, public health, and welfare of women and children. And the great statue dedicated to Lady Meherbai Tata at Sardarojji Tata Park. Her ashes were interred at a cemetery at Brookwood in England on a plot of land adjacent to the resting place of the founder of the Tata Group and her father-in-law, Jamsetji Tata. Later, this would also be the final resting place of her beloved husband, Sardarojji Tata. The words on her tombstone say it all, and it reads, "She died as she had lived, working nobly for the cause of the women and the country, which she loved and served so well. May her life continue to inspire all of us." Thank you.
Thank you, Shashank, for such a wonderful presentation. Now we have questions. Question from Saurabh. May I read it to you? Or
Oh,
yeah,
yes, please.
Meherbai
I'll
Tata.
just
Okay. Yes.
Vidushi, read the question.
Yeah, sure. Meherbai Tata can be labeled as social reformer. Does she have any contribution to the nationalist movement? Shashank?
anything in particular has not been done by Meherbai Tata as far as I know, as far as I got to know, reading all the articles about her and the information that's present. But we can say that she is a social reformer because what work she had done for women in India and for children as well can be can is I guess enough um, to be like to prove that she was a social reformer.
Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, we will move forward. Now I would like to invite Mr. Shrikant sir to present the vote of thanks.
Vidushi,
Yeah.
Shrikant sir had to leave for a meeting,
Oh,
so he has left. I will do the needful then.
okay. Okay.
Right. I think it's my pleasure and my privilege to be proposing this vote of thanks to our students for this very, very wonderful initiative that they have started. And I'm very sure it's going to be a great learning process for all of us. I think most of us would have heard the name of Meherbai, but never knew so much of what she has done. So, and as with some of the comments that were made today, I'm sure it will help all of you who are preparing these presentations to work on it accordingly. Professor Habib, with reference to Muhammad bin Tughlaq, had once written that his projects were brilliantly conceived, badly executed, and disastrously abandoned. But I would say that it is a brilliantly conceived project, very well presented, and we are not going to abandon it, but we are all going to work on it together so that over the course of a year, all the people who have contributed to the making of India after 47 and also before that, there are many, we know of many names, but we don't know a lot of details about them. It is going to be a good learning process, a journey which we would like to undertake together. Shashank and Tejaswi, you've made a very good beginning. It was a very good effort on your part, and I'm sure the others will follow similarly. Thank you so much, Vidushi. You were a very, very good host. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining in and being part of this series, Hidden in Plain Sight. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. In the last, I would request all of you to switch on your cameras uh, for the screenshot.
Who's going to take the screenshot? Is it Pratyush?
I guess yes, Pratyush.
All right. Thank you, Pratyush.
Done. Okay. So with this, I want to thank all of you to take a precious time of yours and making this event a successful one. With this, we wrap up the first event of our series, and we wish you a good health. And now we sign out, and kindly you may leave. Thank you.
Very well done, Tejaswi and Shashank. Very, very
Thank you
informative.
so much, ma'am.
And I
Thank you,
think
ma'am.
this is what was there in my mind, that we need to learn more, and you've done a very, very good job. But then there are learnings to take back from here, and that we will try and incorporate in the coming series. Thank you so much. Thank you.